Welcome everyone to another episode of Jazz on Sports. I'm your host, Jasmine Pollock, and today we're going to be getting into the whole weekend of sports, but I want to mainly talk about Saturday and Friday. We all know this was rivalry week in college football. This is the first time since we've had the 12 playoff system. Now we have so many implications in these games that happened this past weekend. I have never seen this many fights in college football. I've seen fights in football, but like the amount of fights we saw this past weekend alone, even in the NFL, everybody was just angry, and we love to see it because we don't want anyone to get injured, of course, but we love to see it in sports. We love those battles like that and those teams that really despise each other. But we need to talk about this Georgia and Georgia Tech game first. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to Jazz on Sports. Again, you can catch me every Monday at noon talking about all things sports, and also subscribe to the newsletter, Jazz on Sports. It will be called The Podcast now, and we'll be getting into that a few minutes later. So let's get into Georgia Tech and Georgia. This game, it was just so crazy. 8 overtimes. I am not joking. If you missed it, it was a great thing for sports because the record is 9 overtimes. I don't know if they were trying to break it, but 8 overtimes in Athens. Georgia ends up winning the game. It was a great game. Georgia Tech did get jumped to an early lead in the game, but Georgia stormed back and they made it very interesting. Obviously, it went to 8 overtimes. But for Georgia Tech, I want to talk about them for a little bit. I know their coach used to coach with Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart was his former boss, and he mentioned himself, like before the game, nothing I hate more than Georgia. And his team was prepared. They were ready to play. But you could tell both teams obviously were tired. All the players were tired, and they were ready for this game to be over. But Georgia gets the W. They are playing in the SEC championship game against Texas, a rematch. And we look into the SEC championship game. Texas ends up winning against Texas A&M. That game was kind of one-sided, even though Quinn Ewers made it a lot closer because he did turn the ball over a couple of times in the red zone. But I look forward to seeing how Texas, because we know they got destroyed by Georgia a few weeks ago at Texas. So we're going to see how Texas balances this. But the concern that I have for Texas is Quinn Ewers. Can he stay healthy, and can he make those plays that are needed for them to get over Georgia and not turn the ball over like he does? For me, I was not expecting the Longhorns to use Archie Manning for, as a Taysom Hill kind of player. I wasn't expecting that because he is a talented player. He can throw the ball, but I think them using that 2-quarterback system could be interesting. But at the same time, you have to do more than 17 points to me to beat Georgia. We know Beck and those guys are able to score and push the ball down the field at any moment. We saw that in the game against Georgia Tech. So we will definitely see that's going to be a big game. But I do see Georgia winning that game. I do not think Texas is going to be – this is their first SEC championship. Now that they moved to the SEC, this is going to be big for them. So I hope they come out, but I do have Georgia. Georgia's been there. They've been doing this. They have the experience, so I expect Georgia to win this game. Then we get to the Ohio State and Michigan game. This is where everything just blows up. This, not even the 8 overtimes. We're talking about everything. The fight started. It started, the energy started with Ohio State and Michigan. We know this rivalry is one of the greatest rivalries in sports, not just in college, but in sports. Both teams, both schools hate each other, and we love to see these games like this. Big playoff implications. Big Ten championships on the line, and Ohio State loses 13-10. Was I expecting that? No. This is for Michigan. This year was just a year they're trying to get back to the ranks. We all knew that ever since Harbaugh left and J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, those guys left, and they won the championship last year, they're going to be rebuilding. And they're bowl eligible. They won 8 games so far this season, and that's a big deal for them, being that, you're coming off a championship, you're trying to rebuild. That's a great way to rebuild the program. And to go into your opponent, your rival's house, and beat them in a very ugly fashion. It was a very ugly game. I mean, 13-10. That's a very low defensive, one of those gritty games that we were expecting, of course. But that's not the problem. It's the after the game. That's what happened. That's been the talk. The planting of the flag. Everybody's angry. Ohio State fans are going off. Michigan fans are going off. Michigan players and Ohio State players are arguing. Ryan Day, who is the Ohio State coach, just standing there looking around. Here's my thing. What I have an issue with now all of a sudden people are upset about flag planting. This is sports, right? This is college. It's not like they're going to do something irrational. I came in your building. I'm going to plant my flag here. That's just what the rivalry is. That's just what it is. And for the players of Ohio State, you're fighting. Where was that fight during the game? That's my biggest concern. Where was that fight during the game? Where was that physicality during the game when you guys lost? That energy should have been put in the game. Don't get mad at Michigan for planting their flag. They've been owning you for 4 years. And for Ryan Day, what bothers me about him is you're standing around there not getting your players. You're standing around looking around instead of, hey, guys, let's go. Leave it alone. Let's go. Back in the locker room. No, you're standing around. You're asking what's going on. What are we talking about? And I think this is going to cost him his job because now they're not playing in the Big Ten championship game. It's going to be Oregon versus Penn State. This is how big that game was. And they're still going to the playoff, but to what expense? You didn't make it to your championship, your conference championship game. So when we look at that, it's a big problem. And for Ryan Day, yeah, this is not it. This is not it for you. I see a lot of Ohio State fans. One of my friends is an Ohio State fan. I know Ohio State fans. They're ready for you to go. You have to beat your rivals. You have to beat them, especially in your building where there's so many expectations for Ohio State this year to win a championship, to get to the promised land and hoist that trophy at the end of the season. Now, not saying you can't still do that, but now it's a lot harder because the bracket is going to be a lot different. So for Ohio State and Ryan Day, I don't think it's going to last very long. I think if they don't win at all this season, if they don't get to where they're expected to get, he's going to be out as their head coach. So for that, when it comes to that, I enjoyed what Michigan did. Not the fighting aspect of it, like, punching and stuff like that. And I saw players getting pepper sprayed. I'm not talking to that extent, but I love it. I came in your building. Everyone overlooked us. This rivalry, you can never question a rivalry. Came in your building and planted our flag there. If you're upset about that, then your energy is put in the wrong thing. Your energy should have been put in the game. That's just my opinion on that. But Michigan gets the win, 13-10. Then we get the Palmetto Bowl, South Carolina versus Clemson. South Carolina ends up winning 17-14. A lot of the games were really close and very gritty, and we love to see that on Rivalry Week. But for South Carolina, this team is dangerous. Heading into next season, they're going to be a very dangerous team in the SEC. 8-3, they were slept on. Everyone overlooked them. Clemson. Even though Clemson lost, they're still playing in the ACC championship game because Syracuse upset Miami. And I have a question for the people out there. There was a lot of teams, a lot of coaches saying some interesting things about the Canes. You have Syracuse's coach. I'm doing this for Dabo. I did it for Dabo. You got South Carolina. We're rooting for Syracuse. What is the stake against Miami? What's going on? And even when they were doing the commercial for the ACC, they were predicting SMU and Clemson in the pictures. And the games haven't even started yet. So they were already there was some conspiracy around that, that the Canes fans were talking about. But the Canes, for the Miami Hurricanes, this was supposed to be their year. And this top offense in the nation, but the defense couldn't stop anyone, obviously. And when we look at that, Miami is they're now, I believe, 14 in the nation. But for me, the Miami Hurricanes, it's all up to the committee now if they want to put Miami in there, which I doubt they will. There's a lot that has to happen, and I don't think the committee is interested in putting Miami because they were waiting for Miami to lose anyway. They don't really. I've noticed that they don't really love Florida teams like that, but, that I digress. That's another conversation for another day. But when we look at this, Miami defense was a problem the whole year. And it is not the Miami defense of 2001. Complete night and day. Couldn't stop anyone. Got some turnovers when they needed to. Yeah, but they weren't that 2001 defense that we saw back in the day when they played and won that championship in 2001. So for the Miami Hurricanes and Mario Cristobal, you're heading into next year. You're still top 10 in recruiting. They're still going to bring a lot of players back. 100%. I believe Cam Ward is gone. He's probably going to go into the draft. But for them, I just, you would hope that the committee makes the right decision, but I doubt it. They still get a bowl game. They still going to, compete for a bowl game, but Clemson's in. SMU and Clemson will be playing in the ACC championship. Then we have the Iron Bowl between Alabama and Auburn. We all know Alabama won that game 28-14. But now the question is, are you putting Alabama in? And I believe they are going to try to put Alabama in. And my biggest question, I had this conversation with my father, and, just to ask the people if you want to comment on things like that, is now that we have 12 brackets in college right now, if you don't make your conference championship, should you get a spot in the playoff? Now, you look at Clemson. They lost. Of course, Canes lose, and then you get in there, okay? Alabama is not playing in the SEC championship. It's going to be Texas and Georgia. But they're going to put Alabama in there for whatever reason. I don't understand. You didn't even win your division. You didn't even win the SEC West. I believe you finished third in the SEC West, third or fourth, one of the two. You didn't even make it, but they're still putting them in. And I'm not understanding that, especially how how Alabama has looked all year. But Alabama's their darling. They want that. There's money involved. I get that 100%. Ohio State. How many spots they're going to drop Ohio State? Is Ohio State still in? Who knows? But there's a lot of questions. But I'm happy that they have 12 teams, because now it adds that parity to it. Now it's like, okay, do you leave them in? Do you leave them out on that 13th spot, waiting for somebody to drop? Things like that. But you look at teams like, there's a lot of teams, Syracuse is an up-and-coming team. Not saying they're going to go in, but they're an up-and-coming team that is really excited. We're really exciting for them. But you have Oregon, so I'm going to name all of them. In the ACC, SMU versus Clemson. SMU is a one-loss team. The Big 12 is Arizona State versus Iowa State. The Big 10, we have Oregon versus Penn State. Then we have, that one doesn't matter. We have Boise State versus UNLV. But I have Boise State winning that because we know who plays for them. Ashton, who is, him and Travis are going back and forth with that Heisman. We have Georgia and Texas in the championship. So when we look at this, I'm going to go with, if we're looking at the schedule, as far as the championship games, I have Georgia, Boise State. We have I have Oregon beating Penn State. Penn State, their coach, he is very he doesn't beat the teams he should. Penn State's coach, and that's no disrespect to Penn State fans, Jay and Cole, but I don't know if they can beat Oregon. Oregon's the number one team in the nation. They've been, the number one team for the whole season. Arizona State and Iowa State. That could be a very interesting game. Both teams can they can push the ball down the field. That one I believe is going to be a shootout. So I don't know about that one. Clemson and SMU. I'll lean with SMU. Clemson hasn't been, they lost, last week. So I don't know if Clemson has enough, because SMU is a very high-powered offense. I don't know if Clemson has enough. So that's my wrap-up of that. But we look forward to a lot of these things. We're going to see what the committee does. There's going to be a lot of big questions heading down in this season, or in the playoffs. I'm really excited for it, and I think it's going to be a lot of anger. We look at the two Heisman race. We have Travis Hunter and we have Ashton. I have Travis winning, but no disrespect if Ashton does win. But Travis Hunter plays both sides of the ball, and he plays at a high level. I know a lot of people don't want to see that because of Deion. And imagine if Deion has the Heisman Trophy, say like I did that, I helped him do that and things like that. For Colorado, for Colorado, shout out to them. For them starting how they did last year and how Deion came in and completely changed the team this year. They three losses, that is phenomenal. And I'm happy for them, and I'm excited for them and what the future is, and them getting those recruits and things like that. Shador is going to be a very good quarterback, in the NFL. Hopefully gets in the right position. Him and Deion are very adamant about that, of where they want him to go. Travis Hunter, he's going to be a beast. He's going to be one of those top guys in the NFL. So I'm really excited for him. Ashton as well. There's a lot of talent coming out of this draft that I'm really excited to see who's going to get. But that wraps up the show. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will look forward to see you guys next week. Please make sure to subscribe to the newsletter, Jazz on Sports, the podcast, where I'm going to be doing a wrap-up of all my sports content and things like that of the week. So make sure to subscribe to that. And of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jazz on Sports, where we're talking all things sports, from NFL to basketball to college, anything you have it. But that wraps it up. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.